since yesterday afternoon. I know Kelly and I were in the room for some of that and got caught up on some of it, but wanted to create a space this morning so that we can talk and be transparent and open and share with us. And I think just appreciate everyone and everyone sharing as we continue to move on this collaboration and try to build something together. Well, so I really appreciate Bill being here tonight.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to be here. So, take a breath, assume good intentions. We are here to, I think we can figure out community, figure out how we can stay community, figure out how we can call each other in and move forward. Yeah. And that could, look like a lot of things. Sorry, I didn't necessarily have a plan. I'm curious.
Do we need someone to start?
Yeah.
I'll go for it. We are currently, I believe, and I believe most of us would agree, we're in a toxic work environment right now. And I think that it very easily could not be that situation, but it has become that situation. And I think the behavior that we're all witnessing every day, consistently, is unacceptable for so many different reasons. Because we all literally get paid to play dress up every day, and we're coming to an unsafe environment consistently, watching our friend get put through the ringer, and we're all just witnessing it, unsure of what to say or what to do. And it's exhausting. And I know for myself, I have to quell my reactions to it, because not only am I I don't know how to, in this moment, stand up for this human being who's not being treated like a human being, because I want to react, but then I also have to go through the filter, okay, I'm a young man of color. If I go to rage right now, the white people are going to think I'm fucking crazy. So then I can't do anything. And I hate that feeling. And that's not okay. I know I'm not going to pretend to speak for everybody, but I know I'm not the only one feeling this way about this situation. And it's very disheartening to come to work every day and watch someone just be treated as other so specifically. It's not okay. And it has to stop. I don't feel comfortable moving forward until it's actually dealt with and apologies are said publicly, so we all know what the hell is going on. That's all I have to say about it.
I think adding on to that, there's been time to think about things and to plan and choreograph and research and do all of that for the cast that we have. And it feels as if that, there's been conversations, there's been people to be here, we've had, the first few days, we had those conversations, but then moving forward after that, I don't feel as if those were always put into place. Especially yesterday, when a number was choreographed, really not with, I'll just say it, with Yannick in mind. And that was frustrating for me to watch. I know it was frustrating for other people to watch. And it's it hurts me to see that because there's been time. And there's been the opportunity to do that, to think of that person and to think of the cast and the choreography and movement and blocking and options, and that hasn't, in my eyes, hasn't totally been reflected, and that is disappointing. Because I want theater is supposed to be for everybody, and it doesn't feel that way at the moment, and that hurts my heart and my soul.
A little bit. I think the beauty of having such a diverse cast is that it presents us with the opportunity to set the show for the cast. And I think we all felt as if some of us in the cast were coming in, to a creative team that's touched the show before, and we haven't. So there was this sort of coming at it with, we've done this show before, we haven't done this show before. And the level of flexibility to input elegant solutions for the new cast. And like a moment I clocked is, if I may, Yannick voiced that Yannick is very comfortable, playing instruments. If it beat every number and it's just playing instruments, great. And if there wasn't time taking, or if there was, and the solutions being input and the choreography wasn't working out, I think we have elegant solutions at our disposal that just takes a little bit more of an open mind to say, you know what, maybe we can input another instrument, rather than sort of, while it is commendable to persevere and try and get it right and make sure, I think there's also a mutual respect in saying, I acknowledge that I'm not yet equipped with the tools to do this completely right and completely the way that I think everyone envisioned. So let's pivot. Let's sit down and actually see what works, and let's actually see how we can move forward in a way that does fit this cast and does fit this production today at the McCarter, with the tools, with the resources, with the people we have. So I think just building off of that, in that, whether there was a year of prep work and it just isn't working out in the room, or there was a day of prep work and it was an unforeseen thing. Like, I think all of that can be forgiven in the place of acknowledging, okay, something's not working, but, Yannick said that they would love to play an instrument. Great. And asking Yannick, would you still feel included in the number? Would you still feel as though you're acknowledged and a part of the show if we were able to pivot this way and sort of input this system instead? And maybe that isn't exactly the show, that existed in 2019, and Ricky has a track that is envisioned for, but it fits this cast. Mm-hmm. And I think moving forward, that openness to really set this show on this cast, I think could benefit all involved and make a much safer space and a more open space.
If I may respond to that, working on Space Age the other day, I feel like was that process?
Yeah.
That it may seem like this has been, yes, there are choices that are informed, but something like that was completely out of that conversation, right?
Yeah.
Of what's fun to play, what's fun to do, how would you like to move forward? And I'm learning too, and I hope, and I'm happy to hear and receive this feedback. I also hope that you feel, or that we can build a space where your feedback and your collaboration is respected, because I can guarantee you that this does not look like what, I love what each of you have brought to it. I don't feel personally that I've set a different character on, you know what I mean? And I want to continue to encourage what you want to bring to it. But yeah, I love what yannick-robin said about playing instruments. We never had somebody playing an instrument in Talia before. We never had somebody playing an instrument in Space Age. We never had somebody playing the, I can't remember. So I guess what I'm saying is I share that wish, and I think it's really important to have feedback of when you're feeling like this is being put upon me, or I don't have space in this to be myself. I just want to invite, that's an important moment to check in with yourself and say, hey, let's have a conversation about this. So, like, let's have a conversation about it in a moment, or hey, on the next, you know what I mean? Like, can we grab time before? Because I do care about that, and I care about that. The way you are tracking understudy tracks looks different than the people doing them, and that's beautiful because you're an incredible artist, and you know what I mean? I want you to be able to bring your full artistry to that, and I think it feels like an important moment to maybe talk about that communication of when stuff isn't feeling right, and reiterate how much I do want to hear that. I will not think you're crazy. You know what I do want that, and I feel like I hear myself inviting that, but I realize in positions of power that may not always feel like that's a genuine invitation.
So I'm hearing a couple things, but I want to give people space. I know people came into this space with such like big thoughts, big feelings. So I just want to leave time for that, and then I want to kind of jump into like my sense of like what I'm hearing and how we can move forward.
Yeah, I think like yesterday, why I finally really is we were in a situation for over an hour, like watching just zero solutions be presented. And I know like we're collaborating on this piece, but when you are in a rehearsal room, like there's a dynamic, you know, between the table and the actors, and you don't want to always voice the solution. It's like you feel weird. Sure. And stage management might be offering things behind the scenes, but just nothing ended up being said in the open about like either the prop could look like this, or we can hand clouds off, or just nothing was said out here. So we're all imagining how we're going to try to make this work for our castmate. Or even if yesterday it was, we sadly don't have a solution yet, but I promise we're working on one. Like, so we're just sitting there watching a number be put up that, like, in our minds, I'm like, how's my friend going to achieve this?
Yeah.
And so that's, like, what felt really helpless and, like, hopeless about yesterday, and why it just, like, all bubbled over. Was even, like, just making the space to say, we sadly don't have a solution yet, we're working on one.
Thank you for that.
Because that's okay too. Like, we're learning. I think we asked at the beginning, like, you ever done a show with the disabled actor? No, most of us no. Like, I'm learning, we're learning, I get that. But just being, like, able to say it.
Yeah, and I think to that point, I think sometimes, and, you know, I'll even put myself in this, that, like, sometimes, like, the, like, fear of, like, making mistakes, I feel like, is, like, in the room, and so then no, like, real, like, logical and, like, sensitive solution can, like, come out of it, when, like, perhaps it maybe, like, things get taken personally, when it's, like, it's not.
Yeah.
It's about, like, serving the people in this room and the, like, project we're here to create. So I think that's part of it too.
I think it's also not putting in all of the decision making on Yannick as well. like that they shouldn't have to be the one saying, hey, this isn't accessible. Hey, what am I supposed to be doing? Like, none of us then have to do that. So, like, yeah, I know that they've kind of exhausted all of the options that, you know, meetings and conversations and stuff like that. And so, to, like, have all of that and then have yesterday happen when it's the end of the show, you know, it's like, there was time to figure all of that out. And it seems as if it wasn't ever thought about. I'm like, I'm confused. Why? How? I just don't really understand how all that happens.
I would say that this is like, I was explaining how muscles works to my daughter yesterday, because she ran a whole lot. She's like, Mom, I've got more. It's like, yeah, because there's like these muscles are strings, and then they stretch and break, and that's what hurts, and then like it actually all fills in together to like kind of make it stronger. But that process of breaking, like, doesn't feel good. But that's growth. That's what growth looks like. And like the heart's a muscle, that's what we're doing. That's why we feel the way we're feeling right now. So I mean, thank you for that, and really acknowledge that this is what growth. This is tension and growth. And to thank you all for being willing to cause your heart's tension in this way. So I think what I am hearing, two things in terms of maybe, I don't know if we'll be closure to this conversation today, so I don't want to set those expectations. So how to be an ally in this space. How not to put yourself in the situation of feeling in a certain paralysis of not being able to show up as an ally, which is hard. And also the idea of how do we can create containers for potential options or like conversations that divert from an original plan. Yeah? So in terms of, to me, that's like both of them look like a pause in the process, in like the direction of the work that's happening. So, and there's different kinds of pauses. Like I was going to say about this too. You know, there's a pause of just like, we just flag this. We'll like continue, but then when we get to a natural point where like we get through a number, like we're at like the end of the scene, like now we have time to have this conversation about this. And then there's the pause of like hard stop. Like this is the moment where we actually need to have that conversation. Like, and when that's appropriate, how that's appropriate, like all acknowledging, you know, everyone in the room in the best way possible, to be able for us all, like, what will be the best strategy for helping us all get to hear and be able to like actually hear and listen. Do you know what I mean? Because like in the moment sometimes, like stress actually, it's just, you can't hear. You can't even think 5 seconds ahead. So yeah.
I think it would be helpful to let the person know that you're about to set up a bunch of table chairs and talk about them in a circle. I think it would be super helpful to let a person know that this conversation is about to happen.
That this conversation is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So
These chairs?
yeah.
Yeah, you should let someone know you're going to talk about them full circle
Yeah.
with a whole team. That should have been announced. That's how you ally, number one.
Today?
Yeah.
Or today?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, that's it. So like that's. I think-
Bewilders me that that's a lesson, but go ahead.
And when and how that happens. Is that, so in terms of strategy, I think that these conversations, like when they get to a certain level, like a certain fever pitch to a certain extent, of how does this moment get marked? How do we say this, we're having a circle, we're circling up time. I don't know if that could be like what we do you know what I mean? Of like, we're gonna have like a circling up time and knowing that this is what this is, yeah? That could potentially be a language, like I need a circle, or like we need a, or like, I don't know what the language is for that.
It's just words.
Yeah.
And feelings and just saying them. Instead of at the end of rehearsal just circling up and whispering and then next morning me showing up to a bunch of chairs. That's not how this goes. It's not. And I'm sick and tired of being told that I owe everyone transparency, and I'm not getting it. What is that?
Would it have been at the end, like at some point at the end of the day, yesterday, to say we're having a circle moment?
That sounds like a decision made without my consent. That's another problem.
Would that like?
That's also, how do we not hear that too? How is that not being heard? You just said to me, we're having it, not how do you feel about it? That's a problem.
Okay.
I just walked in here and there were chairs. That's a problem.
Are there any thoughts about offering this space for like this moment then? I think, yes, we need, like, I feel, so this is like, I feel the need to have a circle. And then what happens? Then what? Is there, how do we have the conversation about that need, but then also sharing, I guess how do we feel about the what's the word, like requirement of participation in that? Do you know what I mean? Because I think if I'm feeling that like I need a circle, like there's a moment we all need to talk about it. How can I share why I need that circle, and then do I give people the option to opt into that conversation? Is that valid, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's an option. I'm sort of at a loss here as well. I mean, I don't know how to operate exactly, but
Yeah.
I suppose I don't know that answer to that.
So.
I mean, I don't want to have the need to have more circles.
Right.
You know, like it's like the better option to be. I feel like we should be talking about not, you know, what's the solution when things go wrong. It's talking about what are the things that are like should we fix the things that are already wrong. Like I don't want to have to have more circles, you know. And like I am very uncomfortable at the moment. Like I'm having a ton of anxiety. Like I've never had to be in this position and like feel scared for my job and my career because it's scary to talk up to the people who have your careers and your job in their hands. Like I'm gonna be honest about that. Like that's really scary for me, and it's frustrating that I also have to feel that. But like I don't want to continue to have to be put in the situation to be standing up for somebody or for myself. So like I don't really know how to answer that question about the circle, because I really don't want to keep having these conversations because we shouldn't really have to be here in the first place.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I like again, we don't have to find necessarily like solutions right now, but know that this is the feeling, like this is the potential want, but then there's also the anxiety, and there's also like the idea of like this element of surprise, or this like you know not knowing, and this mystery, and all of a sudden we're confronted with this moment, and what it takes to actually prepare ourselves for these conversations. So I hear all of that, and if like I'm here. Corey's here as my producer also, to continue to have, like, to be able to set up systems of having these conversations, if, like, you know, they're warranted. So then, I think this is a piece of, like, how to have this conversation, and that none of us know, and that's why we're trying to, like, all map it out, and all map it out as an ensemble to a certain extent. So, I think, like, moving on in terms of, like, how do we detoxify the room, and how do we create moments to show up as allies? Like, what can allyship look like in this room? And is there a way that we can all even just express what that can look like? We don't necessarily have to figure out a recipe right now. Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is just ownership of a mistake. When a mistake is made, just take the moment and be like, hey, I'm sorry I said that. That was not correct, and I realized that.
To the person.
To the person. Own it, and then move on. That's all it takes. Just take ownership of a wrongdoing, because we know the intention was not there. But just own a mistake, and that's all.
Yeah, when we also talk about harm and repairing harm, yes, apology, 100%, and then also action is a part of that repair, right? You can't repair harm without a change, a shift in action. And I think, I'll just speak for me, I think that's the thing that I've been struggling to see in the room, is that we have a lot of these conversations, and no matter how they come out of, also a lot, I'm sorry, yannick-robin, you haven't been heard a lot, and I'm sorry that we just set up a circle of chairs without talking to you. I'm very sorry about that. And so when you talk about repairing harm, there has to be a change in action for that, and I guess that's what I'm personally struggling with.
Gina, do you mind if I just, because I want to speak to something that Kelly just offered, and first want to own my own misstep here in that by not being with y'all at first rehearsal and getting to introduce myself and explain who I am, what I do, why you're seeing me around. We've never had a chance to really open this up, another route of providing feedback. And first and foremost, I want to say that, and I think I speak confidently for the staff of McCarter, and particularly the artistic staff of McCarter, which I know is a tough line to draw here. But like, we are working hard to try and create an environment where advocacy and allyship is not something that will receive retribution. And I know it's a lot easier said than done. And it needs action to back it up. But I do want to hold space for that. We are, as a staff, not looking for punitive action based off of you voicing your thoughts here. And it's actually really important and really valued. So I just wanted to lay that down first and foremost, and then offer too that, like, when I pop in here twice a day, admittedly have not been able to do that much this past week because of some other things outside of this room. But like, in the same way that Gina can be an avenue for feedback and expressing concerns and issues in private in a way that may feel external to the rehearsal process, I'm here to be a channel for that, for y'all as well. And I don't want you to feel like you have to continue to run into the same obstacles over and over again, or like you've hit a ceiling, because Sarah's pulling double duty here in this room, and sometimes it helps to have another person outside the room to talk to. And I want to just offer that to this group. And just in specifically, responding to Kelly's comment, because I really don't want to, and I don't think any of us want to create a space where people are fearful for their careers or their jobs to speak up on something that they're uncomfortable with in this space. That's just not the environment that we want to create here.
I want to affirm that, and thank you for that, Corey. And it's not an accident that Gina and Corey are here this morning. Gina's presence was requested by someone, and I agreed, like, clear communication around that. I know we check in every morning, and her presence was requested as part of this this morning, but understood, heard, thank you. And Kelly, I just want to speak to that too. This is a change in our industry, and it's a big one. I think of actors feeling comfortable sharing what they're really going through. And I think it's muscles, and I want you to know that I appreciate what you're saying, and I hear it, and it makes me think all the more of you as an artist and as a human, as a performer. And I agree. I'm tired too, and I want us to be able to move forward. This isn't, but I guess I just simply want to say thank you. And I am having the opposite feeling about you as an artist right now, that you're vulnerable and you share that. And I want to say that to this full circle. And that is a change. And I know that fear is real. And trust me that I have been there as a freelance artist. I know. And it's something that we can talk about, and it's something that this room can hold. And we have different lived experiences, but this is a change that I want to see in our industry. And it is It is building muscles. It will take time. I am human. I am not perfect, but I do want to say that this is a space where that is valued.
And if I could just speak a little bit to what Mo was talking about, because I feel like I might be hearing a connection of dots that may not actually have occurred. And so I want to address specifically what you were talking about, yannick-robin, about feeling like there were conversations that may have been happening yesterday that resulted in this meeting today. And I just want to lift that those administrative staff were informed of a request to have this sit down today upon arrival at 9-ish, and that this was not a premeditated.
I know it wasn't you, Corey. It's okay.
Sorry?
I know it wasn't you, Corey. It's okay.
yannick-robin, I'm not trying to exempt myself from behavior or excuse what happened here, because I think Mo's larger point is correct. Like, once we heard that this was requested, we should have communicated that that's how we were going to start the day to everybody in the space, that once that request had been launched. But so sorry, I apologize if I came across like me trying to excuse what happened. I was just trying to lend some extra context in that this was not like a premeditated conversation. Let's all sit down and talk about this from an administrative standpoint. It was a request that we received.
In terms of accountability, also, understood that this was happening, that probably was not something. I think I overstepped in sharing that I knew that this was happening, so I want to acknowledge that as well. So this is very much, I know this is, I know the sensitive moment in that, so I'm sorry. I am wondering if, to me, this feels like space, to make space for these moments. I know the story was very anxiety-inducing, and all of us, I think, would rather be on the beach than, I don't know, whatever those other options, the opposite of this is. But to me, I'm wondering if what I'm hearing is there needs to be space for allyship, space for potential, imagining otherwise, just questions of imagining otherwise, and for you, just creative people that are seeing it, space to offer that. So I don't know if it's during a scene or during choreography, if there's 5 minutes or of a check-in of just how are we all feeling right now, and if there's that kind of space, knowing that we can't do massive systemic change within those 5 minutes. But I think that's maybe 5 minutes to say oh, I'm feeling a thing, and then someone just to say heard, or someone to say this I feel and always speaking from I feel harm was done, and then leaving that 5 minutes to say I'm sorry for the harm. And then but knowing that there's a finite amount of time to acknowledge it, whether or not changes can be made, and then we can say oh, now I know it, so now let's think about it. Maybe it'll happen the next day, maybe it'll happen the next week, or just acknowledging. So to me, I don't know if it's building in just little check-ins so that it doesn't continue to build, so we need to get to this moment too. Just how do we get to these moments of release? And it's terrifying to feel that and to have, but I don't know if that's a useful attempt. We just try it today, and then if that's try it tomorrow, and then this is the worst idea ever. But just in terms of like just how we move forward and prevent, like provide like release valves so that this happen. Did you?
No, I agree. Like, there needs to be like, I think to some degree there's been a lack of visibility and transparency about being, what's the word? I feel like there's just a lack of like really, not to anyone's like, I know no one's intentionally doing this, but it's like there seems to be a lack of just being like, oh, I see you for who you are and what you represent as a human being going on. And because of that, I feel like there has been poor treatment and poor choices being made because there just isn't the knowledge of how to correctly see someone, if that makes any sense. I don't know if I'm using the right words, but that's just kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think like definitely as someone who has an other identity, capital O, sideways other identity. Don't like, so it's, I totally understand what you're saying. I totally understand what you're saying. I think like the question of visibility is massive. And what it takes to put yourself into that visibility is highly vulnerable. What it takes to like feel that visibility for people that have been capital O othered and marginalized, actually to feel that is like super stressful. That like I think just definitely as a female, as a mother, as a person of color, that like I understand, and I think like this is to say that folks that don't have that capital O othered experience, oftentimes, like, and like people as artists, as like young, early career, like the capital other doesn't necessarily cut across like the big 8 social categories of like race, class, So, but what I found in my experience too is that the folks that don't necessarily have that capital O other, like our expectations, of course, are just like, why don't you see? Like, why don't you see it? Like, I don't like. Why can't you see all of this? Why can't you see what you're doing? Like that, to a certain extent, that's our lens. That's like my lens, the capital other, like just lens, to be able to say like, hey, this is happening. You don't know it's happening though. Like, and the what feels like unconscionable in terms of not even knowing that that's happening. Do you know what I mean? To me, it's just like is the kind of constant refrain of that is really it's hard and it wears you down, But at the same time, like how can we advocate for helping grow that lens from that side? Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's just like, of course, it's like how. There's a constant like this dehumanization, like not full visibility, but how can you help like hey folks did it again, this is what it's coming down to, like this is what we're feeling, and for like to help people understand that that's where it's coming from. Do you know what I mean? Because I think as this, am I getting to what you're saying?
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
So but I hear you in the constant like reminder
Right.
of that it's work, and that's why people get exhausted and fall out of the work. But I think just what is it to take on that grace to say like this is that the idea of visibility and like humanization that like of capital others constantly advocating for, like this is a moment where that got transgressed.
Just to speak like to potential solutions, I think I can speak for myself that like a more attractive goal that might not be attainable immediately would be that organically these conversations are had. They're not like prescribed check-ins. That like in the same way that you're aware that I'm in a harness in one scene and we have to walk around that, or like someone has a hard costume or someone has a quick change that just like, it's like, okay, Jasper's being utilized in this scene. What does that mean for the scene? Gloria's being utilized in the scene. What does that mean for the dance? And that it's not like, we don't have to be, forgive me for speaking for you, but like so gentle about it in a way that we like just end up not talking about it. But like, if I'm in a harness, I want you to acknowledge I'm in the harness and help me get around. So organically we talk about it. We come up with solutions immediately because we see it, we think about it. So I think if we can just hopefully, approach things in the same way and not have to be like, at the end of the number, did that feel okay?
I think I'm feeling that way about this whole conversation. Like, just to echo what Yannick is saying, it kind of just feels like a bunch of words right now. And I feel like the only way we can move forward, and maybe I'm speaking from an emotional place, but like, I don't really know how to not right now. Because it just seems like all very like, yes, like these are the words, these are the right things to say, and then we're going to start rehearsal, it's going to be the same thing. We need to talk about what happened yesterday. We need people to own up. We need people to take accountability. We need apologies. And that's the only way. I'm just like, I'm tired. I'm tired of like the, yes, what can we do? Like, it's just causing more hurt. Like, just can we just be transparent if that's what we're saying we're here for? Sorry. I'm just like, I'm seething. I'm boiling. So, you know who you are. Come forward. Say you're sorry.
Sorry. You know, I wanted to spend the time listening.
Okay.
First, so I could really respond. My internal process yesterday, first, I apologize for the way things happened yesterday. When I came into the room, I was actually feeling good because I did the work, I did the research, and I had accounted for yannick-robin using Jasper in the scene. And then there was something that came up like, oh, of course I didn't think about that. And then after that moment, I was like, oh, and then I froze. I just I shut down and I didn't know how, but I felt like I had to continue. And that's why, it's good to know steps when those things happen, because I'm not a great communicator. Honestly, I'll own up. I don't put words together really well. That's why I'm an actor, so words are said for me.
If I may, real quick before you go on. I did, in a separate meeting, just like this one, when everybody else left rehearsal 45 minutes early, spend the rest of that time explaining to the room that you acknowledge what you did, you correct it, and you move on. Yesterday, you asked me to forgive you. You asked me for forgiveness in front of the room. And you just said just now, oh, I'm not good with words. Honey, I gave you what to say.
Right, that's what I mean.
I gave you what to say.
Hold on. Okay. So I think we just take a space. I think right now I am interested right now in assessing kind of our own impact right now, so that we can all listen. I think hearing your responses. Helpful. I think from your perspective, I think helping. At this point, we need to figure out just moving forward. I think learning from this, maybe we help us learn better, for sure. What I don't want right now is for this to become...
I'm not trying to argue. I'm trying to understand why he needed forgiveness in that moment. That's why I brought it up. You interrupted the moment for him to speak on that, and I would like to hear how you feel about it. Because all I did was say it out loud, and then you stopped me. So if he could speak on that,
yeah.
The floor is for you now.
It was connected to what I was saying about I'm not good with words. I can't put words together. And in my mind, somehow forgive me got interchanged with I'm sorry. Those are in the same kind of the category of I apologize, I'm sorry, forgive me. Those are interchangeable sometimes for me. So it was a mistake that came out instead of I'm sorry.
So is it language? So it's more than language, yeah, like in terms of I'm sorry. Versus, or like what would would I'm sorry have been?
That's not a language problem.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's more than language, yeah.
Like, you need to be able to sit for a moment and think before you speak. I don't understand why that's not happening. That's the problem. It's not a language problem. Think for a moment before something comes out of your mouth. That's not happening. Why? Why? 5 seconds it takes. There's always time. I was told that by somebody else in this room.
The words do matter. Like, yeah, like not discriminating.
It's both, but please go on.
But, yeah, like, I mean, the sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me. So I don't believe in that. Because words do really, really matter. And yeah, hearing like, I'm sorry and I apologize is very, very different than forgiving me. And or calling a person's name or how they, choose to live their life. We've learned in the last few years that that words do matter and how people represent themselves matters and like just as a general thing, words do matter. So yeah, I don't want to say that it's not words.
Just doesn't cut it. This got matched for the. No. Take a moment and think. Just take all the time that you need in that moment in your brain in silence to process. And if you can't, just walk away. Just don't say anything.
I just want to say that my biggest issue is this is just like Groundhog Day with this. Like, there's been a mistake, I'm sorry it's been said, and then the same harmful action is then taken again. And so we can sit here and say words all we want, but I just feel like in 2 hours, a harmful action is going to be had again, and we're going to be in this same loop of I'm sorry, and nothing gets actually solved. The problem is still there because we're not fixing it. We're just talking about maybe how to, we're not actually fixing it.
I mean, it's not for me to offer like what new practice looks like.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry. I'm just expressing my.
No. That's like for me because I'm just like, all right, let's figure out like how we can. So to me, like I'm of course trying to help myself, but I think right now we can all hear that new practices need to happen somehow so that it's not a Groundhog's Day. I don't necessarily have.
I can offer a solution if the actors are comfortable with this, because I'm not the one in the scenes every day. But going through the show with the options for Yannick to do the scene or song with Jasper or Gloria, every single scene, every single song. I've talked with them, and that is something that I want to speak for Yannick, but I feel like that's something that should be thought about. If the actors are, of course, comfortable with that, everybody as a whole. But I know that's the solution that I thought about, is having whatever the actor needs in that moment, for everybody, what's sustainable. We talk about what's sustainable. And I think that's something that can be a solution for the team and for the actors, what's sustainable.
Is it then time to have a conversation? To me, it's just how you, because the training is going, it's so hard.
Thoughts for the team to figure out.
Just from where I sit in the room, I think a lot of that also comes from the difference between asking a question and making an assumption. And I think a lot of times there are like suggestive assumptions that have been made instead of saying, in the same way that it would be like, hey, actor, you have a knee injury, so like maybe we're not going to do a pirouette on this leg. How are we asking everybody what they need at that moment rather than saying, cool, like we want you to do this, and that. Oh, does that feel comfortable for you as an afterthought rather than like making the question, the ask rather than the assumption?
So this could happen before. So is it a presentation of like, this is my idea? How does,
I mean, again, I don't want to prescribe how it happens. I think this goes back to the I'm sorry, I'm struggling with words because when this is a part of your practice, like when consent is a part of your practice, it comes first. Like when I get a tattoo and my tattoo artist practice is consent focused, they ask about where they can touch my body before we even have a needle out, before we have a design. Like, and so when you have a consent focused practice, the ask is the beginning, and you're not assuming what somebody needs, whether that's a break, whether that's a different mobility aid, whether that's a different version of this prop, different vodka bottle, like, sorry.
yeah, that's great.
I think a day to be solutions oriented that was a success. I think we all agreed it was like Space Age Bachelor Man, like did go well. Like Space Age Bachelor Man, if every day was like that, we would never have another circle. And looking at what made Space Age Bachelor Man so successful was that I think it led from like, we have a sandbox and we know exactly what we want, but also how does that look on you? How does that look on you? How does that look for us? So I think we actually have encountered unequivocal success in the room. Like we as a cast after Space Age Bachelor Man were like, that was a revelation of like good vibes. Everyone felt seen. We reached the end point. Like that was it. So, which I think is great because we have a sample size of like what works and what about Space Age Bachelor Man worked. And actually taking the time, like how lucky we are that we actually already found something that works. What about that worked?
Can you articulate like elements?
Yeah, I think, I open this to the floor. I think there was a genuine sense of play and also a very flowing sense of like respectful delegation from creative to actor, because I also understand that as a creative, it can be like the onus is upon the creative to sort of hand down this is what you're doing, because like we've had it can be frustrating to like find in the dark and play around, and there's that oxymoron of like, well, how do we play, but I also want you to tell me what to do, so you tell me what to do that.
If you don't mind,
Please.
if you remember that day before we started, during our check-in, I had a little monologue that I actually prepped since like 1 a.m. to say to all of you, and it essentially was, no offense, but also in full transparency, I didn't want you to control my song. I didn't want it. It wasn't going to feel right. The type of thing that I'm going for, and Sarah, you know this, the angle that I'm going for with Ricky is very weird and random, in left field from what may have been done prior. And like what I was trying to get out of that, I couldn't have done had you not all had your autonomy in that piece. And I made it very clear, I need you all to freak me out as your own little weird people. And I saw that moment in your heads where you got to go to your corner on your own and think, okay, how do I use this space? Yes, he's going to tell me where to go, but when I'm here, what do I do to make this moment so that that actor gets to react from me? And then that's where the play comes. And neither of us know what's going on, and that's why it's fun. Right? Am I wrong to interpret that? Because I felt like I saw you all having fun. And that's why I was having a good time.
Do you have a stare tiger mark? I'm curious if you have questions.
No, it's helpful to hear that feedback, because that was, that's really helpful. That was a good experience for me that day too. You know what I mean? And I think you're right. There's always that balance of where's the agency in that, and where's the container, right? And having some,
it's a little bit like, Three Little Bears, too hot, too cold, just right. You know what I mean? Figuring out if it's all a free-for-all, that can be frustrating because you're like, where are we? And if it's too contained, that can be restricting. And so finding what's the larger story we're telling, and then what's your agency within that. And that's what I love about directing is like giving enough of like, hey, here's the world I think we're in. How do you want to move in that? How do you want to play in that? How do you want to bring your full self and identity to that? And I think knowing that felt like a good day, and I think some of our scene work and and other pieces are, I hope you'll tell me if they're not, you know what I mean? Like, but I think that's really helpful to know for the group vibe. Different groups have different vibes, you know what I mean? Like we're all forming an artistic community here of what feels good, and I think that as a team, you know what I mean? Like we can really take that and build from strengths, build from ideas, all of that. That's super helpful. And if there's other specifics to that, you don't have to share them right now. But if there's specifics to that of like that felt good for my process, let's have feedback. Not only it's important that it's about things that don't feel right. It's also awesome if it's about things like that felt right to me. That felt good. More of that, please. You know what I mean? Like. That is important to us too, because like that day we talked about affirmations and all of that. Like we need that. We all need that as well to keep fueling our creativity, our process, our trust. There's going to be interpersonal dynamics, and we're going to work through those, and we're going to learn. You know what I mean? And thank you for this feedback, and I'm taking it to heart, and I will take it to heart. Like our whole team, there will be learning, there will be growing, but I also want to. I also just want to invite that too, of what works for me as an actor. You know what I mean?
Like, and don't assume that the table actually knows that was successful. Like, be like, don't. So that's, I think, to mark what success looks like, and also to be able to this is what I'm asking, to actually articulate why. Because I think you can say like, that was great. I'd be like, that was great. But we can have totally different reasons of like, why that was great. But like, I think also being able to hopefully, and asking you to hopefully articulate like why that was great for you. Like why that felt great. I think
autonomy.
So, and
why.
That I think can help create help strategies instead of me just like right now asking the boy just like, how do it work? So I think, but finding what's great, I think is awesome.
I think one of the best things that works about any really successful art process is this like tasteful delegation. And I want to acknowledge, Jim, like when you spoke of like freezing up, right? That feeling of like hands clenching, oh no, and then trying to push forward through it. I think the most elegant solution at any time we freeze up is, leaning on even the rest of the creative team of going, you know what, I'm freezing up right now. You know what, let me, and I think we would all deeply, deeply respect that gesture of, you know what, I'm freezing up, there's something, and I think that's also the realness of it, of like, fuck, I missed that. That's, okay, I'm stuck. I have a creative team. I have a cast, and then actually opening up to all of us, and I think we all want to have a supportive space that we're all sort of like sharing this weight. And it's not, well, you missed that, gotcha. It's like, no, we got it. Let's keep going. And I think the thing that worked about Space Age Bachelorman is that it was such an open space of tasteful delegation. Also between the creatives, I think that was the most successful space where directing and choreography and Tiger coming in and the music meshed together really nicely with the cast having agency while saying, okay, we're over here, we're working. It was the ultimate harmonious moment of no one had too much, no one was excluded from the process, and I think that's what made it work. And I think moving forward, it's totally okay to freeze up. That's a very real thing. I fuck up in open spaces, and I clam, my tongue gets dry, I shake, and if I have someone by my side that I go, I'm freezing up, do you mind grabbing this? Everyone is like so deeply respectful of that. In that, I think we all respect each other for having this conversation. We'll actually grow closer by going, yeah, we got you, don't worry, and move forward. For sure. And I think it then actually becomes a space of healing, support, and then it's learning without reprimanding, and it's learning without circle time. It's just like, oh, like I have dry mouth, but I see, oh, cool, and hop back in.
And then we can pause and come back to it, or we can set it. Sometimes that's creativity too, or you're just like, gotta just take a break. I just want to. It's something I'm hearing that that feels like process-wise. If I, for my process brain, talking about, I directorially with Space Age, I feel like what I went into it with is like, here's the story, here's some moments that I'd like to have happen, and then a lot of agency in how do we get there. Does that feel like a process for this group? And we're close to the end, friends. We are close to the end of saying, here's the story of this. Here's some ideas within that to possibly play. Here's sandbox ideas, but let's talk about how do we create that together. Does that? Am I hearing the room?
Yeah.
On that?
Yes. Like giving us space to think.
And even for like little moments at work, it was like, oh shoot, yannick-robin's down on the platform. We need you center. Okay, like we got it, and we got from A to B, even for tiny moments. So like we can get from A to B in bigger moments too.
Cool. This is really helpful, and I want to say space that people want to say other things, but I also I really appreciate this.
Could I potentially offer one more opportunity?
That could be me, and I'm so sorry.
Maybe it's me that I'm attached to when I did warm up this morning. I'm so sorry.
And completely be like, that's not going to work if this doesn't sound right, but I'm having this reaction based off of what I'm hearing. It feels like an avenue that can be created an opportunity here to create an avenue for the cast to have some empowerment to approach stage management and be like, I could use a 5. I could use a 2 to like clear head, come back into this, have a separate conversation with Sarah or Jim or Tiger, whoever, but like an opportunity to pause. And for both ways too, right? Like, how do we make space for Jim to say, oh, I ran into something I didn't plan for, stage management, can we build in a 5 here real quick so I can talk Sarah, recess, whatever, and then come back without feeling vulnerable? Because I feel like that's where a lot of this comes from, right? Like a lot of these emotions that we're feeling is that you're all artists and we're all great artists because we have deep vulnerabilities that we can portray on stage, and that's what makes y'all awesome. And so I feel like keeping that space open to say, hey, I need a second to like pull it back together and come back into this space and keep going could be healthy, as opposed to perhaps trying to push through or like feel like we have to have all the answers in the moment, or feel like we have to answer all the questions in the moment.
Yeah. I feel like, and I guess this has already been said, but like, yeah, like having to push through also comes from like a space maybe of like ego and like wanting to not seem like you don't have all of the answers. But I think that's the part where it's like, damn, like if only there was like, okay, I don't have all the answers for this moment, or like, yes, like I made a misstep, like even for like the moment, this is just speaking for myself, okay. Even with like the moment where we were supposed to have that little moment of the fight with in Noel's number. Yeah, and they were pulling it, and I was like, oh, now I have to explain just like how it's, not appropriate, I think, for, a portrayal of someone pulling a black woman's hair. And also, I guess there wasn't really like much conversation about that. I had to like make the correction myself, and then we all just kind of moved on. Which is, I guess that's fine. I mean, really, it should be just like, oh shit, like, I'm sorry about that. I wasn't being very mindful about that, or like, I didn't know very much about that. But I think it's like when there's, like the not acknowledging of the mistake, like, this has already been said, but it's okay. Yeah, I think, but yeah, no one wants to be wrong, right? Like, it's kind of embarrassing, I guess. But I think if it's, yeah, just take the L, you know what I mean? Like, just take the L. You made a mistake, and it's just like, okay, I mean, I think people, there would be a lot more, like you said, I think there's like more respect that like you're just like pulling down the sheet, you're pulling down the facade of like having all of the answers and just being like, damn, I didn't know about that. Thank you for telling me about that.
It's actually like a self-actualization and power thing. When you apologize, it totally gives it over to the other person. Totally. You have no power. It's like, I'm sorry. Like, everything that I thought I was and was a good person, like, and just the feeling of that is like that total relinquishment of power that the other person then has to say, like, I forgive you, and then potentially give it back. So, like, acknowledging that that's also what the dynamic is of the apology, but just to invite us all over the precipice of that fear of power. Like, give it. Please, just give it to each other.
Yeah.
Constantly give it. And please, also, this is also an invitation for us all to care for when that is given. To also, take a breath before to really feel it, to give it, and then take care of it when it is given. So I'm not asking you to give it back right away. It's just that's what is happening, and to acknowledge that.
I'm at a loss. I was going to bring that moment up as a successful moment of like it was raised that there was concern, we addressed it, we talked about it, we offered solutions, and then as we left, I'm like, "Is that great?" And both of you were like, "Oh yeah, thank you for walking it through."
Yeah, no, I mean,
okay.
it was the way that it was worked out was awesome.
Okay.
The way that it was worked out was awesome, but
But I didn't apologize.
I mean, like, yeah, but I mean, like, I wasn't like losing sleep about it or anything, but I think it's like, hey, Princess, like, what was that? Like, what happened? Like, what was the misstep? Like, how can I maybe be more mindful about that?
Nice.
But I wasn't like, I just like, we all kind of moved on. We were all like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe if there was like, oh, like, how do I not make that mistake again? Oh, I was the person that it was involved with, so you could have, just be like, hey, Princess, like, what happened? Like, what was that moment? And I would have been like, like, I probably wouldn't pull a black person's hair on stage, but
and also like you're totally allowed to also, when you're asked, say Google it too. Like, you don't have to. You can just say the word Google, Princess. It's okay.
Yeah, that's true. And there's also that kind of notion of being like, oh well, I don't have to be a teacher. You know what I mean? But
Google it.
But yeah.
That is a moment to ask questions. That's also a moment to take care. And that there's choice both ways. Ask the question, take care. So it's all in the timing. All in the where we all are. And so know that there's so many options, like in conversations as you go.
Yeah, maybe if you weren't comfortable enough coming up to me. I mean, I don't know if you know what I mean? I don't know if you did it later, but yeah.
But know that, like, that's, and that it's not also something, it's not a missed opportunity either. Like, 10 weeks from now, you'd be like, I still have questions. I'm like, can I ask? And I've Googled, I've done, so now I'm like, this is what I've learned. Is what do you feel about the Google? I mean, it's great, but at the same time, like, I think that, like, interpersonal context is helpful too. But I mean, obviously,
It's a lot of work for free.
Coming in with a foundation.
So just Google it.
It's great too.
Yeah, I think something that's being said here too is like there's a lot of labor, right? Like the folks with marginalized identities in this room are being asked to do a lot of labor, And sometimes the answer is Google it. And there are also other white people in this room who can maybe help with that conversation if there's confusion. And also Google's a resource. Like, nobody owes that labor to anyone else to explain what the oops was. And it is a gift that I'm so grateful for, that we have so many people in this room who have given us so much labor, because like nobody was paid extra for that labor that they're doing. And I just want to acknowledge that and also just express gratitude for that.
But also, it's again another avenue to Corey and I before. There's a moment that happened. There was like self-care needed, but I still have questions. Like, what do you see from this? So, I mean, I think that's also where.
Yeah, and owning that I've been coming into this room and beelining to Sarah because of some things not related to Cyclone, but like in actuality, my purpose is to come in here on breaks and be like, "How are you, human? How are you?" And I'm going to do that going, as we go forward. That's something that I lost sight of in this process, and like, I want you all to feel like there is a safe avenue with confidentiality to express concern, but also know that like Sarah and I and Gina and I are colleagues at the institution, and that I do make it my personal mission to take things and experience that I learn and try and improve the situation in the ways that I can with the positional power that I have. So it'll always be a conversation if you raise a concern of like, are you comfortable with me taking action on this, or are you just telling me something that's frustrating me today? And we can take it from there. Totally. We can totally have the conversation. And that's an avenue I want to open to not only the cast, but the creative team as well. Because it is the intentionality of why I'm here on the breaks, as opposed to, let me go bug Sarah about budget stuff for next season. Like, I actually should be here for y'all. So please feel free to take advantage.
You know that Matt is my swing for artistic directors.
Oh, good.
I'll take any business meeting.
Fantastic. I have a couple questions for you.
I have a couple of graphs ready to go.
And I think this is a really great, great thing. Thank you for that, Marie, because as we move into the theater and we're interacting with more staff, more tech crew, more things, like just knowing all the resources available to you to have a conversation, ask a question,
Yeah, and I'm like, I know Gina and I and Sarah, before this process started, have been trying to take steps with the staff that you haven't even gotten a chance to meet yet to try and create base levels of education on some of the things we've been running into in the room to try and reduce the possibility of things happening again, right? Our colleague, I've been using this phrase so often, but like our colleague Julie Dubner in our artistic office uses the phrase, make new mistakes, right? Like, we make a mistake, we learn something from it, and we carry that learning forward so that we don't make that mistake again. We're going to make new mistakes, but as long as we're continuing to get that new information and learn from it and not do it again or really avoid doing it again, then we're making some progress. And so I think to Sarah's point, like, as you start meeting designers, as you start meeting design associates, stage ops folks, production folks, front of house folks, like, avenue for feedback, and of course avenue for feedback with the creative team, but they've got a lot, they've got their own things that they're managing too, and I would love to encourage to continue relying on that resource so that everybody can have a breadth of balance in this process, because it's a lot for any one of us to hold.
Because you guys actually have to be actors.
Yeah, I'm just going to be sitting out in the house during tech, so y'all are the ones busting your butt on the stage. So, allow me to hold what I can hold for you, and we can go from there. I think my office line is on the contact sheet, as is my email. My office line forwards directly to my phone because I still haven't set healthy work from home boundaries since the pandemic.
You better stop. What did I tell you about that burnout? Stop.
If you call my office line, or my cell might even be on the contact sheet, I'm a good texter, I'm a good emailer, although text is definitely the easiest way to get a hold of me. Mo's got it, Sarah's got it, everybody's got my number. So don't hesitate. And I'm here every day with you, except for Saturdays at the moment. But once we hit tech, I'll be here literally every day with you. So you'll see me. and I'll be more present. And we'll be saying hi. I'll be making eye contact, and I'll be smiling behind my mask, and you won't be able to see it. But I'm here with you.
I would say, like, in terms of the labor of representation and speaking for other identities, marginalized identities as well, I'm really excited, actually, that if I can tell folks, I don't know how it's going to work out in the schedule, but on Thursday the 21st, during the dress run, Roger Adichie is coming for like an hour to present everyone that's like to our growing ensemble, which will include like deck crew, dressers, designers, like assistants, like all like this room gets to grow, very soon. And Roger Adichie is a national leader in disability, and that we're going to have like a cultural competency conversation, like specifically focused on disability, but of course like crosses over into it cuts through. And I was talking to Roger yesterday. Disability is something that cuts through all identity categories, and to know also that level of conversation again also applies to various identity categories as well. So to take the, even in terms of like being an early career, being artists of color, wherever we are, that hopefully that will set a kind of framework for how we can begin to see each other, interact with each other, and like just really consent-based process on a production that some of us are coming to for the first time, like assuming like we're just going to do this thing like we always did it, right? It's just like, well, we hope like let's give it this framework and see, and hopefully that'll be an opportunity for all of us to learn and ask questions.
Do you mind if I expand a little bit on the intentionality there? So like this, what Roger knows, Gina knows Nicole, our associate artistic director from her work at Roundhouse Theater, and really the idea to bring Roger in was in reaction to like, we did not necessarily set a groundwork understanding of what that is in a way that removed responsibility from Yannick-Robin from having to explain common things here, rather than speaking to specifically what Yannick-Robin needs in this process, right? Because everybody's an individual and disability is not universal, right? Sorry, do you mind if I just finish that little bit of context? So, by bringing Roger in on the day of the designer run, what we're hoping to do is take advantage of the second opportunity we're having to bring people together on their first day in space on this project and lay down a universal foundation of some basics here that Roger can speak to as an expert in his field, so that we can build on those conversations to get specific about the needs of the production, but so that we're no longer placing the burden on folks in this room to have to explain the basics. Sorry, please go ahead.
No, it's fine. I just feel like if that person's coming in and getting paid, I should be too.
Sure, let's talk about it.
Numbers need to be down. It needs to happen. It's been too much work.
The other thing is, like, we're talking in terms of disability. It's not just like there's disability across the staff, and like visible, invisible, and I think locating all of our sensibilities around that is going to be extremely useful. Like there's like even Roger talking about the different like temporary, like chronic, like what it how we can all even like reframe how we think about just general disability and like the spectrum of it. So that like while yes, I think cultural competency, I think as we're dealing with specific disability in this room, but what this conversation also is hopefully to include all of us that are entering, and there are staff members with disability also. So to kind of like widen, like or just help us all shape our lenses to how we even think of disability in a general way. And also best practices for someone knowing that all of us are going to touch it in some way or other in our lives. So, and then like, like inviting you if you are interested in best practices and talking to you, but but we can talk about that. So that's the other kind of larger framework of even like, just really like just shifting how we're even thinking about how we culturally approach disability as well. As part of being. I don't know. Ralph is awesome. He's Japanese American too, and like when all of like just the massive spike of like anti-Asian violence was happening, I like called Roger. I was like, "How are you doing?" And he was just like, "Ooh, ooh." So like there's affinity in a lot of ways with Roger. He's an amazing person and like really here to serve the work. He's really here to serve the work and understands production. I met him through production. He understands what you all are. In terms of just when I say like a dress run, he totally knew what that was, you know, and like that this first time, oftentimes designers are going to be in the space, like totally understood what that was. So like, it's that kind of scholar.
Taking a time check of due for a break here.
Woo! Oh man, wow.
Do we feel okay stepping outside of this, taking a break, maybe doing some singing next? I just want to acknowledge this might be a tender day, and that's, you know what I mean? There's space for that. There's space to continue talking.
I just wanted to express a fear that I have. Sure. Based on, I am a raw nerd most of the time, so I'm sorry for speaking emotionally, but it's just where I'm at. But yeah, I just wanted to express a fear from a past show that I did where we had obviously different circumstances, but it was a show with whatever, I don't need to give context, but basically we had a talk similar to this, and it felt like maybe we were heading in a different direction, and then the weeks following it became very like separated, and people started vilifying one another, and I just really don't want that. And I just, this just seems really familiar to me, of like, you know, saying a bunch of words and then we leave and then nothing changes, and it becomes a really, like, even worse. I'm not going to project that onto the team because it's a different group of people, and I'm hoping that, like, these words are true and we're going to keep working. But yeah, I'm just expressing a fear and just wanted to throw that into the space and, like, hope that, you know, we're not vilifying each other and that we're working together to move forward, and just like trying to take accountability for our actions and our words. That's just wanted to put that out there. Thank you for that.
Yeah. I co-sign that.
Yeah.
And connecting to that, I also, the same thing, conversely, I hope you feel you can still work with me as we go forward. And, you know, I do feel some resistance and anger at me, and that's understandable. I'm just trying to navigate the way through. So the same thing, too. I hope we can all keep that open conversation.
I think, like, to what you're saying, it's like, where is the moment where you're like, oh, no, we're going back to what it was. Like, that maybe is the language, to be like, ooh, like, that now that that's entered into the space, like, that's also an option to offer, and that's also something to hear. Because, of course, like, it's like so much as practice, like a muscle memory, like, this is how I walk, and we're just like, we can't move. It's like, oh, you can't move that way now. It's like, oh, new way to move. Okay, so to offer that, I think, is really going to be helpful, and to know that, like, oh, we're back, and now we're even worse, and like to be like, oh, okay, I've heard what that clearing really is.
And if I can uplift, because we talked about so many things today, what I'm hoping are some clearer or new pathways of raising the red flag in a way that feels different than continuing to do it in the same way. Like, if we feel ourselves slipping, or if you feel this dynamic is starting to happen again where people are not having faith and trusting each other. Gina, myself, like, let's try some new paths, because there are ways into these conversations that we have the privilege of having by not being in this room every day and having to, like, be in that space, right? So, and we've also talked about giving people transparency and full context if a conversation needs to be had, of like, hey, I want to talk to you about this thing, so that people can come into conversations feeling prepared and feeling like they know what the conversation's about to happen, and not feeling like they're surprised or ambushed with new information. I think that what I'm gathering from everybody in this room is that would have been valuable today and valuable in other conversations we had. And I feel like that's something that Jean and I can help hold true while everybody's working on this project together. Sorry.
And if you don't mind me bouncing off of that, again, in full transparency, because I was not given that this morning, I have been heavily catatonic and feel myself slipping into muteness. So whatever I give you today in terms of my 100 on stage is whatever it is, and that's because of this. And that's just what it is today. Y'all made that bed, so we gonna sleep in it.
Yes, and again, this is a conversation requested by the community. So I want to make sure that, like, when we talk about making the bed, that we're careful about what we're assigning with that language, but 100% heard and respected. And if we're going to take time to have these emotional conversations, we need to expect that the outcome the rest of the day is going to be tempered. And I think that's a reasonable expectation to have for this room.
Yes.
And going forward, hopefully we're not going to need to have a conversation like this, but there will be little ones that need to be had, right? Because that's what's true with any process. Sorry, go ahead.
I think life is really all or nothing, right? We don't move to all perfect, and hopefully we don't move back to all, what you're like. It's gonna be, it's gonna be a process. But I really appreciate you saying that, because I really believe that about collaboration. We're making something bigger than any individual in this room, and we're only as strong as what we can, what we can directly and clearly and honestly, hopefully sometimes joyfully share with each other. So I think we should give. Oh, I'm sorry. And then I think we should give people a break.
Expressing another fear as well, because I might not say this in the most graceful way, but I also don't want the responsibility of speaking up or saying there's space to just fall on the actors as well. I have a fear that we will be the ones to be expected to speak up when something is wrong. While we're the ones mostly involved in that, we do have other people in the room that are also experiencing it. So, I don't want to say that it's their experience, their responsibility, our responsibility. I just want to make sure that, I fear that it will be expected to be just on the actors, and I hope that that's not the consensus.
Yeah, well, we want to give actors agency. We want the full room to be a